The storm rolled in late on a Friday evening. All day, the sky had felt unsettled, weighed down by thick gray clouds that never allowed the sun even a moment to break through. By nightfall, the wind was stirring harder, trees shifting restlessly while thunder shook the windows of our quiet suburban home. I had just finished rinsing the last dinner plate when the entire house suddenly went dark. The low hum of the refrigerator stopped, the ceiling fan froze mid-turn, and the TV in the living room cut out mid-scene. "Just great," I muttered, drying my hands on a towel. Losing power during storms wasn't new to us, but every time it happened, it carried the same unsettling stillness. The only sounds left were the steady tap of rain against the glass and the occasional heavy rumble above us from the hallway. I heard footsteps, then a voice. "Melissa, did the power go out?" It was Ethan. His tone held curiosity layered with a hint of worry. At 17, he was tall and thin, his unruly dark hair constantly slipping into his eyes. Daniel and I had been married for 2 years, and in that time, I'd been slowly learning what it meant to be both a stepmother and a safe space for him during the strange years between childhood and adulthood. "Yes," I called back, keeping my voice steady. "Looks like the whole neighborhood is dark." Ethan appeared in the kitchen doorway with his phone held up like a makeshift flashlight. The soft glow lit his features as he adjusted to the sudden blackout. "Dad's still at work, right?" "Yeah," I said. Daniel was on shift at the fire station. Nights like this keeping him out even later than usual. "It's just the two of us for a while." Ethan stepped inside, the glow from his phone reflecting off the countertops and catching the window just enough to make the room feel less empty. I noticed how tense he looked, even though he was trying not to show it. The combination of the storm and the silence made the house feel larger than it really was. I opened the cabinet where we kept emergency candles. Finding a thick white one, I set it down and struck a match. The warm flame flickered to life, casting soft, comforting shadows across the kitchen. "There," I said with a small smile, hoping it would settle him a bit. He moved a little closer, almost without realizing it. The light brushed the side of his face, highlighting the uncertainty in his expression. "You're not scared, are you?" he asked. I let out a quiet laugh. "No. I've lived through enough storms. The lights always return eventually." "I don't know." He glanced toward the dark hallway. "It just feels strange." His honesty tugged at something inside me. Ever since stepping into the role of his stepmother, I'd seen how hard it was for him to open up. Losing his mom so young had carved a space in him that couldn't be filled. I never tried to take her place. No one could, but I wanted him to know I was here. Present and steady, especially during moments like these. "I understand," I said gently. "When I was your age, I hated blackouts. Everything feels unfamiliar when the lights disappear." He looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment the candlelight softened his features in a way that reminded me of Daniel. I realized he had stepped in closer without even noticing. The kitchen wasn't big, and suddenly the distance between us felt even smaller. I shifted slightly, lifting the candle to move it toward the table so we'd both have more room. In doing so, my hand brushed his arm. The touch was brief, accidental, but enough to make him pull back quickly. "Sorry," he said, embarrassment flickering in his voice. "No need to apologize," I said softly as I set the candle down. "It's the storm. Everything just feels a little tense tonight." He nodded and looked at the floor, his hair falling forward again. We stood quietly for a few seconds, the candlelight swaying between us while the storm outside battered the house. I could see the unease in the line of his shoulders. He was 17, almost grown, but still a boy in certain moments, wanting reassurance more than anything else. "Ethan," I said gently, "come sit with me at the table. We'll wait it out together." He hesitated, then followed, pulling out the chair across from mine. The candle sat between us, stretching long shadows along the walls. "When I was a kid, my mom used to tell stories during blackouts," I said, trying to lighten the atmosphere. "Silly ones, spooky ones, anything just to make the time pass." "Really?" he asked, a flicker of interest in his eyes. "Really," I smiled. "Want me to tell you one?" He shrugged, but a tiny grin betrayed him. "Sure." So I started. I told him an old story about a stormy night from my childhood, when my brothers and I became convinced our house was haunted, only to discover later that it had been nothing more than a loose vent flapping in the wind. Ethan laughed at the way I described our panicked shrieks and our ridiculous attempts to hide under blankets. His laughter warmed the room more than the candle ever could, easing the heaviness the storm had brought. As the night stretched on, the stories kept flowing. Ethan told me about a prank he and his friends pulled at school, and how his teacher's face turned bright red. I shared the memory of the time I burned a tray of cookies so badly that the entire kitchen filled with smoke. With every exchange, the storm outside seemed less threatening. Then a thunderclap cracked loudly enough to make the walls tremble. Ethan flinched, instinctively leaning forward across the table, closer to the candlelight, tanned closer to me. For a brief second, he looked much younger. Like the boy he must have been before life forced him to grow up too early. I reached out and placed my hand over his. "It's all right," I said. "You're safe. I'm right here." He didn't speak, but his shoulders relaxed. He looked up at me, eyes soft with gratitude. It was just a moment, simple, steady, and human. Nothing more than a boy needing comfort and me offering the reassurance he needed.